Briefing for Tuesday, 16th of April. I'm Stephen Ridgway. So, further information about the Palo Alto networks issue vulnerability that's been talked about a lot over the last few days. So, there are hot fixes available for versions 10 and 11 of Pan OS. If you are running those devices or running Pan devices on those versions, strong recommendation to patch as soon as you can. Previous mitigations still stand, though, so if you have implemented the mitigations, turning off the components that they recommended, you will be okay until the patches can get rolled out. However, given the nature of these things and the fact that it's perimeter defenses, definitely worth being on top of this one and doing what you can in order to mitigate or fix it. So disabling telemetry is effective. Device telemetry is effective in mitigating this particular risk until you can get the patches rolled out, which of course will give you some problems if you're using the telemetry for monitoring or whatever, but better than leaving the devices vulnerable on the internet. So an interesting article I came across in the Register regarding Chirp smart door locks. It appears that the passwords and private keys to those locks are hard-coded in Chirp's Android app. Now, so to put this in context, this is an Internet of Things type door locks. I think they are more common, these particular ones are more common in the US than elsewhere. However, the organisation that owns them also owns Yale and various other security device manufacturers. The issue here being basically that if you've got the Android app, you can reverse engineer out the private key and the password, and then consequently use the app to remotely unlock any locks made by that manufacturer, it appears. So the severity score, CVSS score of 9.1 out of 10. So this is particularly concerning, i.e. it's pretty trivial to be able to exploit this vulnerability. The underlying issue is going to be difficult to fix. But what I think you have to ask, why would you want to put your door locks on the internet? Is it really that important that you can remotely lock and unlock things from anywhere in the world? I suspect it's that whilst there may be use cases for that, I suspect they're fairly limited. And so, I don't know how you would mitigate this, other than if it's possible to restrict access to the door locks themselves, or effectively segment them off from the network, perhaps. The locks themselves do have an NFC-based key, so that you can do. You can effectively unlock them sort of manually using, presumably using your phone or whatever it might be. But left alone, that doesn't prevent them from being attacked over the internet if they remain connected to the internet. So Whilst this is, I think, an issue much more in the US, as Chirp is a Texas-based organisation, the concept I think is of much greater importance, and I think it does highlight the need for understanding your risk profile when you're going for super cool technology to do things. Do you really need to do these things, and what happens if they go wrong? Yeah. Right, Cisco Duo has warned that telephony supplier data has been breached, exposing multi-factor authentication SMS logs. So Cisco Duo says that one of its telephony suppliers has been breached, which compromises multi-factor authentication messages sent to customers via SMS and VoIP. Well, we have spoken about this concept. Again, I think the specifics are less concerning than the concept here. Undoubtedly, using multi-factor authentication is better than not using multi-factor authentication. However, if you are creating a hierarchy of secure multi-factor authentication through to down to, well, it's better than not doing it. I think SMS or VoIP solutions for MFA are right at the bottom, at the level of, well, it's a little bit better than a password. So as we've recommended before in this briefing, if you are using MFA, it is better to use something like these rotating number type solutions, Google Authenticator, that sort of thing, or some of the hardware keys that are available are also very good in this space as well. So I think it's a timely reminder that as MFA becomes more commonly used, which is a good thing, attacks against MFA solutions will become more sophisticated, and historically attacks such as SIM swapping are well known to be very effective and relatively reasonably easy to execute for us from a spearphishing perspective. Difficult, certainly harder to do en masse, but if you are concerned for your data or concerned for protecting your accounts, it is better to try to avoid using SMS-based, messaging-based codes, because they can be intercepted, or in this case, they can be, the telephone supplier can be compromised, and the whole lot just taken away. Interesting article I came across on Security Affairs, which is talking about the Ukrainian blackjack group targeting Russian ICS devices. Now, we know that there is a significant amount of cyber warfare going on between Ukraine and Russia at the moment. Brought this to your attention mainly because there are some interesting details around what is being done and how it's being done, and bearing in mind that whilst it may be a Ukrainian group that are using these TTPs at the moment, it doesn't mean to say that other groups won't be able to copy them. That's the nature of this stuff. So definitely worth having a look at this particular article. The malware that is being used is wonderfully named Fuxnet, as I suspect a play on Stuxnet from a few years ago. But and yes, it does F up your systems if you get attacked by it. And the idea is really around gaining access and then causing disruption. So it will attempt, it goes as far as attempting to actually damage the chips on devices which have been attacked. So makes an interesting read. Certainly something to be aware of, because this stuff is likely to get, played back in variants, and it is also worth being aware of the sort of higher level, the sorts of cyber attacks that are being thrown by one side at the other during an actual war, because it's good to know. The Dublin-based taxi software provider, iCabby, has suffered a security breach. So iCabby, I think, just trying to remember, it's iCabby provides software that powers 800 taxi fleets across 15 countries. So it is, although it's not something that you are necessarily aware of as a user of taxis, it is part of providing that infrastructure behind the scenes. The breach has resulted in information about customers of the taxi firms that use iCabby's software being made available. So, the article mentions BBC senior executives, Home Office employees, members of Parliament, EU ambassadors, so on and so forth. You may say, "Oh, is it just yet another? They've released their email addresses and blah blah blah." Well, yeah, to some extent that's true, but what you've got to also be careful of, I think, is that some of the people using taxis really don't. Or really shouldn't be trackable by adversaries, or it shouldn't be simple to track where they are and what they're doing. And it does provide leverage to adversaries if they know which taxi firms people are using and where they're going and what they're doing. So, it's the details of the breach are still a little uncertain. I will keep an eye out to see whether we get any further information on that. However, again, it is something to think about if you are if you work for an organisation, or if you have particular levels of clearance where physically knowing where you are would be advantageous to adversaries. It is worth considering whether using internet-based systems which can track where you are is a good or a bad idea. I would suggest not necessarily a good idea. Okay, so other things. We've spoken a little over the last 6 months or so about stenography being used to deliver malware, which has moved from one of those things that you play with in security training, on security training courses and in labs and so on, through to, well, actually, it is being used. So there is a new Stegano Armor attack, which is being used to target 320 global organizations. The campaign is being conducted by TA558, which is a particular threat actor that's been around since 2018, targets hospitality and tourism and has a focus on Latin America, but is not limited to Latin America. But I think that more than the specifics of this, and there's a very good write-up on Bleeping Computer, which will link to the briefing. It is to be aware that this stuff network. So where there are tendencies to say, well, let's not worry about scanning incoming image files. Well, actually, you need to. Yeah, it's definitely worth doing. And stenography, yes, okay, it works on image files, but there are equivalent things that can hide code in all sorts of places. So it is definitely worth thinking carefully about how you implement your anti-malware, especially around web-based or email-based solutions, and putting in place some form of protection that is in front of your endpoint protection solutions that you run on end devices themselves. You don't want to be left with that being the only tier of defense. So it makes an interesting read. It does actually have extracts of, examples of extracted malicious code, and also examples of images which, whilst they look perfectly innocuous, actually do contain malicious code. So a bit of a wake up that that one, which has been sort of floating around in the, it's kind of cool, but nobody does it, is, well, no, they actually are doing it now. And then finally from me today, Roku has mandated 2FA for customers following the relatively recent credential stuffing compromise. That's a good thing. So, well done for Roku for mandating that. There were over 500,000 customers affected earlier this year in more than one round of credential stuffing attacks. Using MFA or using multi-factor or two-factor authentication is definitely a good step in the right direction to prevent credential stuffing attacks from potentially compromising accounts, certainly compromising accounts en masse. So if you use Roku, then expect that the next time you log onto your account online, you'll get a verification link and you'll be asked to set up multi-factor authentication there. So that's everything from me for today. Hope you have a good Tuesday, and I'll speak to you all again tomorrow morning.